You in this battle, man, I'll soon be dead. I'll glue your face to my dick so I can fuck with your head. I got metaphors coming through my pores. You probably never been in a battle before, so I hope you realize your mistake. There ain't no party, got some candles, this will be a piece of cake.
Ooh. Get an extra minute in.
We get an extra minute in, folks. Welcome to the 4 Hours Podcast, an internet radio phenomenon hosted by an occasional morning person. I ask the most interesting people I know about their sleep, their routine, life, love, stress, and setbacks. If you want to write to the podcast, you may do so. We are at the Before Hours Podcast at gmail.com. Tell us about your morning routine. But for now, comedian, fellow podcaster, and I'm going to go ahead and say good friend, Dan Pulzello. How you doing, Dan?
Good to see you, Bobby.
Good to
Thanks
see
for
you,
having
dude.
me. Good friend. I'd agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was a little anxious about that as I was saying, and I'm like, are we good friends or nay, great friends?
Because I feel the way about you, and I hope you feel the way about me. But if I'm on a lineup and I see you,
yeah,
or I see that you're on the lineup, or I see you at the show, I'm like, okay, this is somebody I can talk to for like 30 minutes about Civil War history.
About the Civil War, dude. There's so few of us.
Just got in the book. The book you recommended. Just got to Gettysburg Address.
Ooh,
I was reading it on the way here.
hell yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, this is great.
Is it Doris Kearns Goodwin's Team of Rivals?
Yeah, Team of Rivals.
It's a amazing book. Guys, turn off this podcast right now.
Start reading it. We'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah, dude.
when you finish it.
But you and I have also been reading the Robert Caro LBJ book.
Correct.
Which, and how far are you into that?
I finished.
All 4 of them?
Yeah, that was like my last year.
Okay, so for those listening, which is almost everyone besides you and me, that is an amazing feat because Robert Caro, I don't know how to say his name, but he loves writing long, upsettingly long biographies about terrible people. He has one about Robert Moses. He has one about LBJ. Now, I don't know much about Robert Moses. I respect LBJ, but I'm halfway through the first volume. So we covered from, when he was born.
And when his grandparents, the life of his all 4 grandparents.
Okay, so you and I talked about this off mic. I was complaining to you because it moves slowly.
Yes, it does.
And I do like history and I do like reading, but I have a brain where things need to be happening. You know what I mean? And yeah, he does a very good job of setting up.
Yeah.
This is,
and you don't know it's set up. You're like, why is he talking about, and we were saying that, why is he talking about the dirt in West Texas? Why is he talking about the dirt?
He goes on about the dirt for so long.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, now no spoilers.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that he's talking about dirt.
There's the reason he talks about dirt, but when I find out the reason, I'm like, okay, I get it. And then like a chapter later, he's like, I just want to remind you about the dirt. I'm like, Robert, please.
I actually appreciate his style of how much he repeats shit. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I did forget that. What the girl, whoever the author that I'm reading now, what's her name?
Doris Kearns Goodwin.
I'll
read everything she writes.
She'll do it again as like, just as a reminder, this person is the type of guy who does this, just as a reminder. And like, I like the repetition, and I could see how it'd be like kind of off-putting occasionally, but with a thing that's that dense, I'm like, oh good, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah,
because they're all just white guys.
They're all
just like white guys with
horrible
gout.
Diversity in these books.
And they're like, and they try. They're like, this is a tall white guy. This white guy was short. Like, but there's like completely indistinguishable. Yeah. Different white guys. Unfortunately.
And I will say, William Stewart, quite a unique white guy. He's about 5'6". He has bright red hair, and he's from the Hudson Valley, New York. Oh. And I think that's a making of a great guy.
Yeah.
It's me, folks.
You're on your way to the
That's me. Me and Stewart have so much in common. The height, the hair, the location, and we're both, I'm going to go ahead and say it, anti-slavery.
Oh, yeah. That's a brave stance.
Yeah. You know what? If you're pro-slavery, you could keep listening. I need all of the listeners, but please know that
just
I don't
know that
like
you're not welcome. You stay, but you're not welcome. But stay.
Your money's no good here unless you like pay. My Cash App is connected to the Spotify, as is my Venmo. Please, guys, I do not want to go back to doing cold call sales. Hate cold call sales.
Yeah, it's the worst. And they don't tell you. Well, I have a brother who did cold calls.
I was going to ask, did something happen?
No, but like, especially in New York, like the pace of cold calls, I'm sure it's the same everywhere nowadays, but like he got into it, and the horror stories of like all the different things you can do, fake dials.
Oh yeah.
Like he had a number that he knew always went to voicemail, and so if he needed dials, he would call that one. So it would like show up as like, I need 2 more calls. I'm just gonna call that place twice.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard a story of but one of his friends who got hung up on. He thought he got hung up on and goes like, "Oh, fucking bitch," and she hadn't hung up.
Oh no.
And so that was like, he got fired after that.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
But this frustration with cold call sales. I mean, the amount of rejection is like, I feel terrible. I would never be able to do it.
I always think of like, if you're in prison.
Yeah.
I've never been to prison, but I always think of the relationship between the prisoner and the guard.
Yeah.
Because neither one of them, their lives didn't turn out the way that they thought it would. So it's an uncomfortable situation for everybody.
Yes.
Understatement of the century. So in a way, but also not at all. Cold call sales. It's like being a prison. Well, I guess the person you're calling is the prisoner because they get the worst end of it.
Yeah.
But then you're like the prison guard. You're like, listen, I'm not excited about it either, but I need to pay the rent.
Yes. Yeah, I can't put myself into sales. I would just lying. Not like that. I can't lie. I can definitely lie, but sales was. I'm happy that I was able to make money without sales because I don't think I'd have been able to do it. Make a living off of sales, like I don't think I believe in anything enough to sell it.
Yeah, I think the thing that I believed in was to keep living in New York City. That's what really kept me
not starving. Yeah.
Not starving.
I'm not excited about software sales. I am excited about food.
Yeah.
That excites me. Yeah.
There's this weird thing too because my my boss well, the whole company was very into in-office culture.
Oh, brutal.
And so...
But good, or maybe it works. But I hear that, and I'm like, oh, God, I would be the guy who's like, yeah, I got to run. Sorry, guys, I can't do the icebreaker that you spent fucking $5,000 on. Like, I'm not doing that.
Well, you know what? It was interesting is they didn't have any of those like forced fun things.
Okay,
so
good.
They were like, it's really important to us that we have an in-office culture. And then the in-office culture was complete silence from 9 to 6. Just sitting in your little open office space with people that are mostly annoying.
Yes.
And no
and repetitive, and they don't know that they're the worst. That's people who are just like, I guess I don't know. I think I kind of feel differently about small talk, like because getting like early career, you're like, oh my God, small talk is like the fuck. I cannot believe everybody's reading from a script. It feels like, and now I'm kind of just like, if you can eke out some human connection in that, like, I don't feel as like, I mean, I used to be like puritanical of like, no small talk. Let's talk. Let's get into and then what topics would you even discuss? Like from the jump, like, I don't know what I was just, but now I feel better about small talk. I'm like, yeah, go for it. If talking about the weather is something that makes you like a little happier, then go for it.
Well, it's almost like you meet someone, you have no idea where they stand politically. You don't know if they are having a good time or bad time that day or in general.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of topics you can't reach right away. And I feel like talking about the weather is a way of being like, hey, we're not adversaries.
Yes.
It's basically over and over being like, I like you. It's going to be fine.
It's just the Roman handshake of like, I'm not holding weapons.
Yes.
That's why we grab the wrist because it's like, hey, I got nothing on me, but just over and over again.
There used to be this meme, I think back when like Facebook was more the thing, and it would be a thing that like girls mostly shared, a certain type of girl that would share like, skip the small talk. I want to talk about science. I want to talk about history. I want to talk about sex. I want to talk about politics. And I'm like, really? You want to get into an elevator with me? And I go, hey, what's your favorite position?
Yeah. Political position.
Yeah.
No, I meant political position, which is also probably just as like, I'm an abortion moderate. It's just like, that's just the worst. Like, what are you? I'm a moderate on abortion. Like, that doesn't exist. What are you talking about?
That is true. That's one where you do kind of have to pick a side. Although I know, because I grew up Catholic, but most of my family are liberals. So I think if you ask most of them, they would say you shouldn't get an abortion, but it shouldn't be illegal.
Yeah.
And that's probably the moderate position if there is one.
Yeah, and that's kind of it just doesn't exist online.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's silent majority shit,
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think it's a pretty reasonable position.
Yeah, people are super loud online. And my favorite thing to watch is because there's comedians and
that was something I didn't see, but not to interrupt you, but like the Israel Hamas, like, and I know that this is kind of like hack, but I was like, so damn, really a lot of people feel super strongly about this. Not to say that like, oh, I didn't know that, but I was like, the amount of people and people who are like not super educated just like jumping in on it.
Yeah.
The amount of like famous comedians who are just like dunking on themselves.
Yeah.
Like it's like Jesus fucking
the
Christ,
tweet
dude.
and then the apology tweet 24 hours later.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
I was like, why are you gonna like who is shooting from the hip that quick? I was like, what an avoidable PR gaff to like, it's so avoidable. Just like don't say anything for a little, collect your thoughts and then say the thing. But I was really amazed. I was like, these are some really bad decisions. Like taking this strong of a stance on that side or this. I was just like, Jesus
just watching
Christ.
Kramer, but on Instagram.
Yeah, everybody's doing the Kramer. But like, yeah, I guess it's everybody's Kramering themselves. It's like, dude, you could have just not said. You could have had the same anger and just not like said a slur, and it probably would have been fine.
It's Kramering is a very funny
they're all
way.
just Kramering. Everybody just watching, like, dude, get like that's not it. Like, there's no. I don't know if there's a correct way to handle the situation, but that is certainly not it. That's the worst way to handle the situation.
It's like that old Chappelle bit where he talks about, for those that don't know, Kramer. The actor that played him, Michael Richards, was never a stand-up.
Is that true?
He was an
thought it was-
improv acting guy.
Oh God.
And then Seinfeld's over. He's like, maybe I'll fill a theater full of people and try an hour of stand-up.
Okay.
So he, like, as people that do stand-up, we know that's so hard.
Yes.
I've been doing it years. I just did my first half hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for him to be like, well, people know me as the guy that walks in a room whimsically.
Yeah.
That
I could do
could
that
translate
for
to
2.5 minutes. Yeah. He clearly never thought. I thought he was like, oh, getting back to his roots. That was how I interpreted the Kramer clip.
And you know what it is like Chappelle had that bit of, he said, when I watched Kramer have a racist meltdown, because that's what happened. He was like bombing, and I guess a table of people who were black were heckling him. So he legitimately like called them the N-word over and over again.
Yeah.
And Chappelle describes watching this, and he goes, "It made me realize I'm 20% black and 80% comedian." Because at first I was furious, but then I was like, "Man, he's having a bad set.
Yeah.
Come on, Kramer, you could do it. You can win it back."
Yeah, you look at it, and because like that's the issue with comedians, even like Israel Palestine. Like I am kind of looking at it from like obviously I don't have anybody involved in the like whatever my demographic breakdown. I don't really there's humanitarian concerns, like obviously but I like looking at that and just being like, yeah, just see, like it's kind of all professional wrestling, and comedians know that life is professional wrestling.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue. Like it's like, oh my God, can you believe Undertaker chokeslammed his brother? And it's like,
oh my God, it's Netanyahu with the chair.
Yeah. It's like he has to say, like he has to. The reason Netanyahu is saying that is to appeal to his base. Like so, it's all like that. I think comedians see a lot of life as like professional wrestling, and even that is just like. It's just look at Kramer and being like, oh God, he really fucked up that move. Like,
there's even a part at the end where I think he must have. I think he was like, oh fuck. So at the end,
he's like, some words.
Oh, ooh, some words. You can't. It's like, no, you're not being Carlin right now.
Yeah. Some words. You can't say some words. Yeah,
like, that's right, Kramer. No, you can't.
I never thought about that. And he's like, I'm gonna Carlin this. I gotta Carlin my way out of this. I accidentally. He did the equivalent of just like hitting himself in the balls with a steel chair, and then he was like, oh, I gotta do another move to get out of it. Like,
and I think one of the most unintentionally funny things in the world is, I think it was Leno, where it was one of those shows.
Seinfeld is like, hey guys, my friend Kramer's here to apologize.
And then by the way, Kramer kept saying Afro-American.
Yeah.
And I was
funny.
thinking, I'm like, he's not old enough to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a phrase that was like maybe civil rights, maybe civil like.
I mean, I remember my grandpa saying colored, but at like by the time I was like an adolescent, he had updated to black.
Yeah.
You know, so
I don't think, where was Afro-American in the trajectory of like acceptable
I think
terms?
it's actually somewhere between colored and black.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I think us two can get to like if there's anybody who can figure out what the correct terms for African Americans is, it's us for sure.
There's even this weird thing because we're both reading these books about Lincoln and about LBJ, and of course the vernacular for both of those time periods for a black person,
pretty bad. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say like the polite thing to say was Negro. Nobody clipped that. No one clipped that. But even reading it silently to yourself on the train makes me feel weird.
Yeah, I'm reading books about the Civil War on the train is a weird experience because it's like you just kind of like hope that your page is not like full of know like just any of the terms that were thrown around during that time.
Dude, I had and I apologies if I've told this story on the podcast before. I believe I may have, but it's worth repeating. I remember in 6th grade we read the Lenny and the Rabbits of Mice and Men.
Okay.
We were reading of Mice and Men, and not often, but at some point the N-word is thrown around a little bit.
Yeah.
And we were doing the thing where we were reading the book like paragraph by paragraph, like it would be your turn and then my turn, and we're going down a line, and I notice I'm like skipping ahead, and I'm like, oh, there's an N-word in here.
Yeah.
And we're in 6th grade. I think people don't give 6th graders enough credit. We all understood. You know, like our teacher did like pause and be like, okay, here's the thing. And I felt the whole room be like, no, we know.
Yeah.
We're Americans and have coming to terms with our history and stuff. So he was like, I'll read the paragraphs that have the N-word in them. The teacher. He's like, I'll do it. But then there was, I wish I could remember her first and last name so I could say it on the podcast. But one of my classmates in 6th grade was like, I'll do it. I'll read it
out. That's insane.
It was so, and I, even at the time, I knew that her vibe, she was teacher's pet. And her vibe was like, well, I'm very mature and I know that in context, it's okay to read. And I'm like, but that's weird energy.
That's such an insane thing to volunteer for. That's an outrageous thing to say.
So actually have of Mice and Men with me now.
And we're just going to go back and forth reading paragraph and paragraph.
The fact that that's how we spent like an hour of school time is reading. Like now as an adult, I understand that my teacher was probably just some guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? And he was like, I don't know, I guess we'll read the book.
Yeah, dude, how much time does that kill? Like, I mean, you look at like teaching is like trying to you got to fill 45 minutes every day or like an hour every day. That is reading. Yeah, especially 5th grade too. It's just like reading time. Yeah. That's that's a good lesson plan. And I think we need to like, I need to go back into my memory and be like, what was the teachers just killing time? Yeah. Like, cause movies and stuff but reading aloud, that eats up 15, 30 minutes every day.
And I hated it. I was always one of those kids that like counted which paragraph was mine. Yeah. Practice it. See if there's any big words. Start, 3 paragraphs ahead. I'm starting to clear my throat.
Yeah. It's wild to put people on this. I never had like that. I would get like excited for it. And I think that was like early, like given presentations revs me up in the way. And like look now as a comedian looking back on it, it's like, oh, that could have been a sign that I was like starving to like have my words heard. Yeah. Because I always got off on that. I would be like, yeah, here we go. Like that was like an energizing thing for me. It's
interesting how people's relationship with public speaking, because I remember in high school we each had to do like a book report in front of the class, and one of the like cockiest. He kind of had a Jersey Shore vibe for him. We're kind of from the same area. I'm from Hudson Valley, from Jersey. He had like the spiked hair, like a nice car. There's rumors that his dad was in the mafia. And he was so like, he's such a big personality. And when he had to go in front of the class and do a book report, visibly terrified. Yeah. And I found that fascinating. I'm like, just one small change in the context and he's like shaking and shocked and all that stuff.
Yeah. I remember homeroom my senior year, because there was a kid who was not funny.
Mhm.
And I think this goes back to me being like puritanical about like comedy
Mhm.
and having I have to get better at it, but like just being judgmental about fucking unfunny people.
Yeah.
And this kid would come in and it was like, we got to school at homeroom was at 7:20 a.m.
Mhm.
Like get in your seat by 7:20 a.m. And I was always sleeping. Like waking up is really fucking hard for me. And I'm sure it's, different for other people, but my wife is up and has a cup of coffee before I am like even, functioning. So this kid, Joe, he used to come in, and our homeroom teacher was cool. We knew he was like known as the coolest teacher. And this kid would come in and just be like, hey, like the teacher's name was Doc Cat. He's like, oh, Doc Cat, like it was an all guys school. So he'd make like homophobic jokes. Like, so this kid is just like, he would just get in every day and just be like, oh, like fucking, I'm drawing penises on the desks. Wow. Like all this like stuff that private boys school was supposed to.
Do you think
was,
he's
like,
available
funny.
to be a guest on the podcast?
Dude, I'd be interested to see if he has overdosed on opiates, because that was a lot of people in my class.
Yep, same.
The ones who burn the brightest burn gotta hold the opiates quicker than the rest.
Yeah,
of them.
they burn spoons after burning the brightest.
And one day I literally told him, I was like, he comes in and he's like, and it's dead silent except for him. And this is for the whole year. Is Joe would come in and be like, hey, Doc Cat, yeah, what's the fucking, you gonna like touch me or something? Like,
yeah.
And I was finally like, dude, this is not an open mic. Not even knowing what an open mic is. I was like, I said the words like open mic. I was like, it's not funny. Like, you need to shut up, because the rest of us are like, we're tired. I was just like, stop fucking performing. He's like, what? Come on, man. You can't take a joke. Like, and he like brushes it off. And I think it might have changed his behavior a little bit. But then the teacher came up to me afterwards. He's like, thank you for doing that. You were absolutely right. He was like, I couldn't jump in because I can't but he was like, that you were correct. He's really insufferable. Like, and I don't know how to deal with him.
Good for you, dude. I would think like,
but after that I was like shaking, because like that was like public speaking and presenting. And, but I felt so strongly about it that I was just, I don't know what about comedy is just like I need to get my opinions out on like, you think you're funny, you're not funny. It's a wild
and confrontation
impulse.
that's the other element too. At least for me, it would have been like, I hate being confrontational.
Oh, it takes a lot to get me to confrontation, and it's happened a couple times at, weirdly, a trigger for me was sports events where my brothers were playing. I would get into it with fans of other teams. Okay. Watching the game. Like there was one time this guy was like, my brother's team was losing, and I'm in the stands with my family, and this guy starts filming us, and I thought he was filming us as like we're fucking losers, and I stood up over him with my camera and just like passive aggressive, like just stood over him, like filming him, and then I left, and my mom was like, just so you know, that was actually one of our parents who was taking pictures of the fun game.
Hell yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I didn't. Like, I totally misinterpreted that.
I look like a crazy person.
That happened to me like 2 or 3 times, like misunderstandings where I was just like, God, you're fucking like, you're, I don't know if it's like family or honor or like something like that. But it happened enough times where I was like, this is a pattern. I need to chill when like, and it's so specific. It doesn't happen anymore. But like, if my brothers are playing sports and I'm in the stands, I need to like, clearly check how I'm handling myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's that guy has like such a great story to tell.
Yeah, I was like, one time I just took pictures of this family. This guy just came over and fucking filmed me. Like I was a child. He was a high schooler.
I really those confrontations, like people being Karens or whatever, like that whole phenomenon. Well, it all stresses me out, but the part that I do find kind of humorous is when someone's filming and then the other person and they were like, well, I'm filming you too. And I'm like, can the fucking asteroid just come here already?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, it's weaponizing recording. Yeah, it's a wild.
I act
reaction.
as if someone can be recording me at all times.
Yeah.
I have this thing where, when I do want to talk shit about somebody, and I'm in a public place, this is how fucking paranoid I am.
Yeah.
I will literally do the over the shoulder to make sure that that specific person is not behind me, as if that is something that could happen.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and my wife feels differently about it.
Okay.
Comedy, we need to talk shit about other comedians, about other bookers, about like, it is a coping mechanism. And it's also kind of like in the same way that monkeys pick bugs off of the other monkeys.
Yeah.
And if the other monkey doesn't have bugs, they'll just still pretend to do it because that's like I guess it's like their like small talk. But like that is community building of like, I played ping pong the other day with like 10 other comedians.
Yeah.
And it immediately from the jump, we had an inside joke about a comedian who we didn't think was funny. And then the other person's like, no, they are funny. And then that became the bit is we just kept referencing how this comedian is not funny.
Yeah. Say their first and last name.
No, never. But something about the pursuit and just the weird fucking like that person got that and this like it needs addressing and it needs to be complained about in a productive way.
You can't let it consume you because there are comedians
but you can't say
know.
nothing.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, yeah, I guess that like
because that's not a fun hang. The politicking, the person you could feel politicking, like I don't want doing the whole LBJ thing, basically.
Yeah. Because that's. But I guess silence is probably like, and then there's also like morality and being nice to thou shalt not whatever. But my wife is like she hung around. It was a Jeff trip. We went down to Tennessee. And
Jeff Greenspan. Shout out to Jeff Greenspan.
And I brought my wife and I was just like, this is going to be funny. And she was like, this is going to be funny. And then there were a bunch of comedians there who we didn't know were going to be there. But by day 2, she was like, you guys bitch almost nonstop. And I was kind of like, I guess we do. But I'm of the position like it serves a purpose. It doesn't in your world. And in our world, we are treated like shit very often, forgotten about, like
touched in the back of a bus.
Yeah, touched in the back of a bus to completion. And that's confusing.
Touch to completion. That's the name of my memoir.
Touch to completion. It sounds terrible. Yeah. But that is my argument and why so many comedians do talk shit. It's like I think it serves a social purpose. I think you can go too far. That happened very recently. I was on a road trip. It was like 4 comedians doing the we got booked on a show. We're driving down to it. It's in South Jersey. And one of the comedians is like, oh yeah, that guy. We're all just sharing stories about like that person was insane. That person was insane. And this one girl goes, oh yeah, that guy, he was so unfunny. And I was like, yeah, that is one of my closest friends. I was like, that is, you mentioned one of my closest friends. And then I was like, and I agree. I was like, I can see why. Right. I can absolutely see why that person has good nights. That person has bad nights. That person tries things. That person, and maybe they don't even prioritize comedy the same way like other people do. But like, that was a weird experience. I was like, you really went like that. She was like, oh, I never thought he was funny. Ooh. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I had to be like, hey, I know that person and I agree a little bit.
Was that
Don't talk about Bobby like that.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I wish I could say that thought didn't enter my brain.
Oh yeah, you think I was just a fucking Machiavellian just like telling a story
it's really
about
interesting.
You.
So like, because he's like this redheaded guy and talks a lot about history. And I'm not saying this to sound like, oh, I'm super zen or whatever, but if I even heard like an audience member after a show be like that Bobby Sheehan wasn't funny, I don't think it would hurt my feelings a little bit because I know people feel that way. Yeah. Like a percentage of people, I see them. I see them not laughing. I see them with their arms crossed.
And you see them reacting better to other people on the show. Sometimes. And it's all, that happened. I was hosting a show. The headliner was, the headliner hadn't gone up yet. And so it was me, guest spot feature, headliner. And as I am bringing the headliner up, I was like, everybody give it up for your headliner. And he's coming on stage. And I hear, as the exchange is happening, I hear somebody in the audience go, finally, somebody funny.
Ooh.
And there was a reaction from the audience of like, whoa. Like they all heard it, and the headliner didn't hear it. And I told him like after the show, I was like, by the way, like that. But that was one that like, it just kind of hits you in the gut of like, that was 30 minutes of comedy. And you were like, that person didn't like they didn't like me. They didn't like the other 2 people. But they're only there for the headline. It's understandable.
Now you don't have to say who the headliner is, but was the headliner famous?
No, yeah, to a little. No, not like
Do you think the person who
famous.
said that went there to see
Yeah.
the headliner specifically?
specific. He's a draw, so they
Oh,
were
I
there
see.
to see him, and he doesn't come out for, maybe that person doesn't understand comedy shows. You have to have the warm ups and stuff, so you can contextualize it after the fact. But in the moment, I was like, that was hurtful.
When
I
I-
really tried hosting, and they did not. They didn't even think I was funny. That's crazy.
A big thing of hosting, because I host a lot of shows too. That's what happens when you're really successful in comedy. They have you host a lot. And I've come to terms with like, you're sort of, a lot of the times you're not even seen.
As a comedian,
After shows, people would be like, "You were really funny up there. Have you ever thought about doing comedy?"
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you think that it is that I do?
Yeah.
That's, I'm a professional comedy show host.
Yeah, it's the hardest job for sure. And
Well, I think like construction worker, soldier, and stuff.
yeah. Surgeon, foot surgeon.
Podiatrist.
Yeah, there's two bones in the feet.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, there has to. It's only two.
Well, some people have an extra bone in their foot.
Yeah. Penguins. Hosting is the hardest thing. The hardest job on the comedy show.
Yes.
And it's a lot. It's kind of funny. Like, I think I'm a good host. I think you're a good host. And good host is like, you need to put your ego at the door, put your material at the door. And to be a good host is to answer the call of like, I'm going to make this show good, which is not super related to I'm going to do well. It's kind of the same, but it's not the same goal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who don't, when they're like, oh yeah, I'll host. And they don't see that distinction where it's like, you need to put your ego down beneath the show and just be like, I'm going to, and then there's some nights where like, I'm going to do what I like and fuck the show. And then sometimes that works out. But yeah, it's a nuanced, which I don't think a lot of hosts get it. And people who understand comedy get that, like that hosting is, and it's crazy how many even like comedians are just like, yeah, I just go up there and do my 10 minutes of material. And then I get off the stage and I hosted. It's like, yeah, that's not.
Dude,
I don't think that's a job description.
It blows my mind. People are like, hey, welcome to the comedy show. So I was at the store the other day.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, we're getting into it.
Not
dude.
even telling them like the rules. Like, laugh, like, please. I go up there for 15 minutes. I'm like, please
laugh. I need this.
And that's hosting.
Yeah.
It's pleading.
I have a gun in my bag. And I will go postal. So you guys ready for a good comedy show?
There's 20 of you here and I have 25 bullets. So I could shoot some of you twice.
Dude, I was hosting a show last night and it was like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And I fully lean into like it almost sounds sarcastic, but I don't care. I'm high energy the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm my go-to line is we're an intimate crowd, but that doesn't mean we can't make love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah. So you said put your ego at the door. You do sort of feel like a stepdad that wants his stepkids to enjoy their first Christmas together.
Yeah. It's the
When
same
it's going
energy.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just
And fucking how long it took me to be like, you cannot get angry as the host.
Yeah.
You cannot get angry in your set. I've had some bombing as the host is, oh my God. I can think of two distinct times.
Yeah. You think about it while you're trying to fall asleep at night.
Yeah. And then it makes like, and then it kind of, you get like the script, not a script, but at least like okay, I'm never going to open like that.
Yeah.
The open is always like, welcome everybody. Holy shit. Bah, 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 bah. Even if you don't tell a joke for the first 2 minutes, just like getting everybody excited. But yeah, hosting bombs are maybe the most painful because you have to keep going up.
And sometimes, well, for me, I used to think this a lot. Now that I've had more experience, I give myself a break. But sometimes if the show is bad and I'm hosting it, I think I fucked up the whole show.
Yeah.
But now I know I'm like, I've done it enough. I'm like, I know how to do it. It's the audience that is wrong. I will go on record as sometimes saying, the audience is wrong. And it's not their fault.
No, and I think if you surveyed them at the end of the show and you gave them like, why do you guys think that you didn't laugh? They would have no idea. But it's undeniable in the moment. Like, okay, this audience is bad. This audience is good. And good and bad meaning like good means you react to jokes. We're telling jokes that have gotten laughs. We're not going up there. Some people, some people do go up there with like shit that's like not good and that doesn't do well. But like for the most part in a New York City show, if people are paying admission, it's like a bunch of these comics have a bunch of jokes that have worked and that's why they tell them. And visitors to New York, like comedy, like friends of mine who are like, hey, Dan, we'd love to see a show. And I'm like, I'm not performing. Here's a club. Go to that club. It's, of the rankings of the club, it's one of the better ones. Go there. You'll have a good time. And the amount of times they've been like, yeah, the comedians are just so mad at the audience for not being good.
Really?
Yeah. And because if it happens, that's something the audiences don't realize is comedians, none of us are watching the show. You have to assume that none of us are watching the show. Audiences fucking hate it when comedians repeat things that have happened in the room. It's a weird reaction of like, she's a doctor. They already asked.
Yeah.
And then the comedians are always like, oh, Jesus. Like, and it's wild to see how good some comedians are. Is like, did people already they'll say that. Like, did somebody already address that she's a doctor?
Some hosts do a whole crowd work report and send it to the group chat. Because, dude, the worst version of that ever is I was hosting a show. I did crowd work. I did all crowd work.
Yeah.
I generally do
crowd work and I'd be interested to see how you feel about it. But crowd work is like, they're not eating anything that I'm serving. So I need to just do crowd work to just
here comes the airplane.
Yeah.
We're going to find out where everybody's from and who's out of town.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just to coax people into clapping.
Yeah.
I always think even though it can sometimes feel cringy, when you know how they say if you're depressed, smile and you'll trick your brain and you think you're happy. If the crowd is tight, you think of various reasons for them to clap their hands, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm at a show right now. I'm at a show. I'm ready to have fun."
Yeah.
So I was bullying people into clapping. I was doing crowd work, and then the first comedian. Who she was in the room the whole time. It wasn't even like she wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
She's on her phone, and she goes up and I swear to God, Dan, does the same crowd work.
Yeah.
And when people have this thing of she's a doctor, we already covered this.
Yeah.
She's
for
like
10 minutes.
Yeah. She's sort of like, oh, you guys are idiots. Like she had that vibe. She'd be like, where are you from? And they'd be like, I was just asked 5 minutes ago. Oh, is this a difficult question? Where you're from? I didn't understand. I'm like, maybe if you weren't on Instagram for fucking 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then actually murdered her after the show. They
with one of the bullets that I had that I threatened the audience with earlier.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna have to use the gun on the audience, but I used it on one of the comedians.
Yeah. It's fascinating. What was the other? Audiences don't. Well,
they hate Chinese performers too.
Yeah, New York especially. That's something you got to know. Is
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's what I've noticed.
Listen, we're just experts in the fields. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. Hosting is weird. Yeah, so a bad audience happens. One comedian can say you guys suck.
Yes,
that's it. And a lot of comedians are not, and we're so deep in the weeds on comedy right now that it's like people listening to this would be like, oh, I thought it was just there's a whole social hierarchy, and then people in the audience like not immediately assuming that all the comedians know each other very well. That's a weird one. Immediately assuming that all the comedians are watching the rest of the show. That's a weird one. But in general, in New York showcase shows, if a second comic says to the audience, you guys suck, then that's it. That's like it's really difficult to come back. If two different people have said, like the first one's like, oh, you guys suck. Come on, what do you give it? Like, that's fun and playful. The second time, it's like really, really difficult to come back from. Like the audience will be like, why is the second person saying that we suck?
Yeah, because the first one, you're like, oh, that's their vibe.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, there's a little bit of a tension release from like,
yes,
because there's an awkwardness of like, I'm supposed to be laughing, but I don't feel like laughing. You know
And
what I
there's a
mean?
way to do it, and the best comedians can like do it, but that turn is like very difficult.
Sorry, I have to get my left ear keeps popping.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for like months. But I've been so fucking busy with comedy stuff that I do have a doctor's appointment though.
Are you promoting your doctor's appointment?
Yeah, you know what, guys? If you have New York Medicaid, this guy is open on Monday afternoons. That's all I know about him so far.
He takes the insurance.
He has a last name that makes me feel like he might be a native English speaker, which makes me nervous. Doctors and Uber drivers, when they are native English speakers, I feel like that might be a bad sign.
No, you want the top of the class.
Yeah. He's a real, it sounds like he might be a real paisan.
What's paisan? Is that an Italian slur?
Yeah.
Did you just say an Italian slur to my face?
I wanted to gauge whether you were cool or not.
Yeah.
And I'm getting the vibe that class clown in your high school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you're about to chew me out.
Chew you out.
Get real violent, which is understandable since you're Italian.
Anti-Italian sentiment. It's so funny. Yeah. And I think it's been discussed. And I've tried to talk about it because it's a tricky one. But okay, here it is. White people in America, and this is the Ta-Nehisi Coates, like Between the Mountain and Me, like one of the books that he it's really good. I think I butchered maybe the author's name and the title.
Tasahani Coates.
Tasahani Coates. Yeah, there it is. Thank you for saving me.
Yeah.
It's one of those names I've never had to say out loud. Tasahani?
Yeah.
Tasahani Coates. One of the points in the book is that white is malleable. Like the identity of white is not like, and the identity of black is malleable. Like it's wild that like Africans and Dominicans are like, oh, they're both black. And it's like, that doesn't make any, there's nothing like, they're so distinct. Like, and white was like super malleable in the 1900s where Italians were not white. And then they became white. And that movement is fascinating to me, and I think like endlessly funny. Like Italians used to not be allowed to go to college, and there was like, it was only a couple people, but there were Italian internment camps during World War II. It wasn't a ton, and it's not to say that it's even comparable to the Japanese experience. Like, and so this is like racism that Italians have felt is the lightest racism, but it does like exist, and the idea of Italians jumping from like sub-white into white, and it's like the lowest rung of white is like endlessly fascinating to me. When did that happen? Was it The Godfather? Was it just The Godfather? Like, was it The Sopranos? Is that when it happened? Like,
I sort of
was it when pizza became like the like
pizza is
food?
good.
Yeah.
But soul food is good too, and you know.
So it's not the food, because the people with the good food are in the lower.
It's not
social
music.
status.
It's not food.
No.
It's not athleticism.
Yeah, it's not athleticism. So what made the Italians make the jump? And the Irish too. I'm Italian and Irish, which like is both cultures that are like good to make fun of. And so all cultures are like good to, you can make fun of anything like if it's done well. But it happened in my grandfather's lifetime that Italians jumped from like, you know, like, oh, we'd never hire you. And that's why they started the mob. That's why the mob existed, was like, you know, like angst and aggression and feeling, you know, like less than, and just not even be able to get jobs on the same rate that like other white people were. When did that change? Like, what the fuck? When did we get acceptance into white? It
almost feels like hot take. Black people and Native Americans, they got it the worst in America.
Yeah.
This is an idea that I just thought of. And then everyone else got, when they came here.
Yeah.
And of course, the major difference is everybody else came here voluntarily.
Yeah,
you know,
huge diff.
You know, obviously Native Americans were
and
here
there's
first.
exceptions to every,
Exactly. But I feel like, so those two groups, they have gotten it and do get it the worst. And then everyone else got hazed for a little bit.
You think it's like hazing? Yeah.
I think you said light racism.
Yeah, very light racism.
Yeah, hazing. It's a bit of hazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, because it was Germans during World War I. It was like, hey, we got it. You know, St. Louis might be.
That's why we have hot dogs.
Yeah.
Instead of Frankfurters.
Was it actually like it was like a freedom fries situation?
It was a freedom fries situation.
Oh, that's
it's so funny that Sauerkraut apparently there was an effort to make it freedom cabbage.
Freedom
I
cabbage.
promise that's not made up.
Yeah, that's so amazing.
And that didn't stick, but I think you know what? Hot dogs stuck because Frankfurter, hard thing for people to say.
Yeah.
Hamburger, not hard to say. So we kept hamburger.
That is really, that's wild propaganda. It's just like a new initiative. Like as part of the wartime effort, we're going to be sending 7,000 tons of munitions. And we're going to change the name of this sausage.
I remember, so we're around the same age. So we were both like teenagers when the Iraq war started in 2003.
Yeah.
And without having the full understanding, of course, but I was like pretty rah, let's do it.
Oh, isn't it wild looking back on like, we were all in.
We all got really excited.
We were all like bomb Iraq. I remember like it was like on E-Bombs World.
Time to bomb Saddam.
Yeah, there was a bomb Iraq, bomb Iraq. And that was like just videos that we just watched. Like the anti-Iraqi sentiment it permeated everything. And then now like there's like, hey, that was Bush, and co like pushing, like all of us and trying to make the connections, and the connections didn't stink. They were throwing different spaghetti at the wall. It's like, okay, well, Saddam and Osama know each other. Okay, they don't believe that. Okay, they actually have weapons of mass. Like they workshop different reasons for the war.
I do. My opinion on the Iraq war, and I know everybody's wondering.
Yeah,
is it's sort of confusing because I do think Saddam had to be removed.
Yeah.
And I do think that we had to do it. But I do think it was a mistake to do it before we had a bigger coalition. Like the fact that France and Canada were like, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
Even though I think they may have been wrong about being trepidatious about it, I think we should have waited. We should have had a bigger coalition so then it didn't feel like just America going for his own interests. Because I do think Saddam is a bad guy. And at the risk of sounding like a neocon, I do think sometimes when bad shit's happening in the world, we do have to do something about it.
Yeah. If it's in our interests also. Yeah. It's like that bad thing is like the Rwandan genocide.
Well, but
not in our interest.
We didn't do the Rwanda genocide because Bill Clinton straight up said this. He said, because Black Hawk Down went so terribly.
Yeah. He saw the movie and he was like, God, we can't. The runtime on that was so long.
Just the idea of Bill Clinton learning.
Jesus, what? That happened? We lost 2 helicopters? Oh my God. I thought the first one was bad. And we lost a second helicopter on the same day? Yeah. But yeah, obviously it's nuanced.
Yeah. I think, dude, Hotel Rwanda, dude, is such a trip to watch.
I had never watched it.
It's a great...
I read 3 books on the Rwandan genocide.
That is not the relationship people usually have with that event.
Rwandan dude, how about this? I recommended a Rwandan genocide book to like a guy who was like, I'm into like dark. I'm into reading dark shit. Like I'm reading books about serial killers. And I was like, well, there is a 3-book series on the Rwandan genocide. I was like, try that. And he was like, I couldn't make it through the first one. It was too much.
Yeah, the movie is pretty crazy. I want to read those books. I am fascinated by the fact that like as an outsider, like I don't know about the Hutus and the Tutsis and the third ethnicity that I don't even remember the name of.
Yeah, poor guys. They also were in. I've read 3 books on them. I can't remember.
Hutus, they're the gypsies of the Rwandan genocide.
I can't remember.
Meaning they were the number 2 slaughtered, but no one remembers.
Yeah, it was the 3rd ethnic group in Rwanda. Hutu, Tutsi. Fuck, I can't remember.
I don't know if we have any listeners in Rwanda, but we do have listeners in Africa, but I think it's an Egypt, South Africa situation.
Okay, yeah.
Those are the if you're a podcaster and you have listeners in Africa, it's usually from one of those 2 places. Yeah.
So what were you saying about the Rwanda genocide?
We brought it up because Bill Clinton said he didn't want to intervene in Rwanda because of how badly, because that was like a year or 2 before the Battle of Mogadishu in Somalia.
Yeah.
The
what? The
Twa. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. The Twa, dude. That's even a cool. Imagine being Twa. That sounds cool.
That's a cool name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The movie's really good. It's and I watched Hotel Mumbai too.
Okay.
Which I feel like gets.
I watched the Grand Marigold Hotel.
What is that?
I can't remember. I thought it was a reference I wasn't even sure about. I was like, I think this is the Grand Marigold Hotel, the Grand something. And now I'm
Are you saying that's the name of the hotel?
I'm just saying like, oh, I watched a movie about a hotel.
Oh, okay.
That was how I was trying to get it. That was the jump I was trying to make.
I watched Hotel Mumbai, which was about the attacks. I think it was in 2008 in India, and it was Muslim extremists from Pakistan, because India and Pakistan have beef.
Oh, do that?
Yeah, and like a bunch of people died, but I feel like the West was like, but that's India.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Stuff's always happening in India and Pakistan.
Yeah, there was a Bali, like the Indonesian, like, because my wife is Australian, so they're like, oh, Bali bombings, like that's like a known thing for them, and I'd be shocked if there were many Americans who knew like in Bali there were bombings.
Yeah,
like, and where's Bali? Like, it's just that's their kind of like they keep their eyes on the terrorist attacks over there, and we're just kind of. Western.
Yeah, and it's crazy that that's how I want to relax, is I watch movies based on war.
Yeah, Holocaust documentaries.
Just while you're eating like a pint of ice cream.
Yeah,
laying in bed.
Mark Twain documentaries. That's like my wife came home to like me. It was like, oh, my wife's going to be out, and it was a 2-part. It was the Ken Burns like Mark Twain documentary, and that's like she was like, what is that? And that's like an Australian. Who doesn't know Ken Burns and doesn't know Mark Twain. I was like, I don't even know where to start explaining to you who Ken Burns is, who made the movie, or who Mark Twain is, who fucking wrote, a bunch of books. That it is wild. Hitler. I read Hitler.
Adolf?
Nazi books. Not Nazi books, but like Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, Bloodlands, like it's really and it freaks people out.
100%.
Yeah. And I'm like, when you find out the casualty figures of like World War II is like, why don't it's like 20 million Russians died. That's separate Holocaust. Like 20 million Chinese people died. Like it's like, why would you read about anything else? It's the biggest thing that's ever happened.
And it's whenever I think of war in general, I'm like, that's how bad things can get.
Yeah.
Like it's and it's competing ideologies, but I feel like a lot of times it's just like a failure to communicate.
Yeah.
Like you ever, like almost on a macro level, it's like when you introduce two friends and they're just not vibing.
Yeah.
But that happens with like nation states.
Yeah, people.
And then a bunch of teenage boys die.
Yeah. That was why, like, because I think people looked at January 6th differently. Like that, I had a full-blown panic attack when January 6th happened. And I had to call my brother, and I was like, he was in the neighborhood. I was like, can we just like go for a walk? And he was just like, yeah, I don't understand. And I was like, this is not far away from a coup. Like coups happen like this. And I remember reading like a short story about like, I don't even know if I think it was fictionalized, but like based on a coup in Africa. And it was like, yeah, they got on the radio and they just told us that the military was in charge. Like the Myanmar coup is like, there's a
also
reporter.
known as Burma.
There's a reporter who's just like, yeah, weather's pretty good. And you see the tanks in the background and they're on their way to a coup. It's like it's not like everybody, like coups just happen.
Yeah.
And that's a wild, like the Russian Revolution was Stalin, a boat, and a couple thousand soldiers in Moscow. And that's the communist regime, like it wasn't that many people. It was the right place, right time. There's maneuvering and stuff. There's Trotsky. But the Russian Revolution was like, that was just a thing that people read about. Is like, wait, hang on. It's over. Like, it's a full new system of government. Like, it's overnight. And so I think that people in history, and that's why I get freaked out about like global warming, is because like, okay, we don't like post Cold War, like, hey, things are pretty good. The spike in war deaths with Palestine, with Ukraine is like, I remember seeing a graph that was like, here's how many people died. Here's how many people died in wars like in the 1900s, 40s. It goes way up. Obviously like 70s and 60s, like Korean War, and 80s, like post Cold War, you just see this dip, and then you see a spike again, and like that's Ukraine and Palestine. It's a little spike relative to the amount of war deaths that have ever been happening, but it's like if you want a destabilizing force, global warming is like, well, you guys aren't getting along great right now. And what if I told you there's going to be less food? There's going to be less places to live.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, there's like, you didn't get, and that's, I think, like reading books about the Russian Revolution, which is the most confusing, most it was just like the government just stopped existing. And then there's 3 war. I was like, it's really close to happening.
Yeah.
Like, obviously the Russian system wasn't super robust. It was like authoritarian rule. You remove the authoritarian, like there's a gigantic vacuum and there'd be less of a vacuum in the US. But it's like, we're all really like, every nation is just a, bad election away from really a drop in quality of life that is like unimaginable. Like in the lead up to like Hitler's invasions and stuff, Berlin was like popping. It was like a great place. They're scooting the Jews aside, like, and there's like light Holocaust happening. But
It's a little light Holocaust.
yeah, but it was like business was booming, everybody was like vibing, and then that city was leveled in like 5 years. Like, so I think that's what history gives you. The context is like, hey, things can get we're in a weird thing where we're in a weird time where things have gone amazingly, like really fucking good for it's been a short historical time, but it's like there's not really, like, the Dark Ages happened after Rome. Like the idea that like, oh, progress is just nonstop, baby. It's like, it's just a beautiful upward path. It's like, no, it can take, like, I think we're heading for a dip is what I'm saying. And I think most people would be like, anybody who's paying attention would be like, yeah, no, things aren't going great. Yeah, to look into the future and be like, it's all up from here, baby. It's like, I don't have that view. I'm not wired to like look that way. And I think we've both read enough history to know, like, there's some red blinking lights on all of this stuff. So this is a comedy podcast, but that's how I feel.
Would you say you're not a morning person? We got 5 minutes left, so I should.
Oh wow, 5 minutes.
We blew through it, dude. But
yeah,
I gotta ask because the whole premise, it's a loose premise, and the listeners know that by now. But I'm curious because you did say, so you have a wife who's from Australia, and she's
Australian,
a morning person.
She's a morning person, thrives in the morning, does more by 8 a.m. than I'll do until noon.
Really?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
I have hit people who have tried to wake me up before,
okay.
completely unconsciously. I get into such a deep sleep. I could probably sleep for 12 hours. If I were to go to sleep tonight and like I did like a real big run, like I got to like tire myself out, but I could sleep for 10, 12 hours.
I'm the same. I set an alarm the next morning, even if I have nothing to do that day.
Yeah.
Don't have anywhere to be, because I will sleep. I think my record is something crazy, like 15, 16 hours.
Yeah. On multiple alarms. Alarm 1 goes off, and that's just to get me a little bit out. Because then alarm 2 comes along, and that's the one that's like, okay, here is a go. And then sometimes I'll be like, I am my first, the first thing I have to do is until like 30 minutes from now. So I'm going to set a 29-minute.
Yeah.
Like that's, and my wife is just like, hitting snooze is like the worst thing for you. And all the studies. And I'm like, I'm not human until 10 a.m.
Oh,
I am
damn.
a fucking caveman who is just at the amoeba level of existence. Like I react to light. Like I don't even have a conscious thought until 1 p.m. probably.
Okay.
I like left to my own devices. I took some time off from stand up. So like I'm on like a 2-week hiatus, and now I can like function in the morning, but like with stand up, I mean, it is lost hours in the morning usually.
Yeah.
And good, kudos to people who can keep a routine and stuff, but like stand up is so routine shattering like all the time that I'm not a morning person.
Yeah. It's hard to have a routine when you do stand up, because you're a freelancer basically, and to some level beholden to the whims of crazy comedy club owners.
Yeah.
So
really, really crazy people in a way that most regular people would be like, I can't believe that someone like that exists. It's like, no, he exists.
And to be fair, most of them are cool, but you remember the not cool ones, and you remember the eccentric ones, and dare I say the crazy ones.
Yes, there are some wonderful people who book comedy clubs.
All the ones that book me, they're amazing. The ones that don't book me, watch out.
I've
for
heard
them.
rumors.
Watch out.
Yeah, there's rumors about the people that don't book me.
So you're a coffee guy too.
Oh my God, huge coffee guy.
How much coffee do you drink a day?
At least 2 cups.
Oh yeah, that's my vibe as well. 2
Yeah.
cups in the morning, and then I try, unless I really need an emergency Diet Coke midday.
Yeah.
I'll try it because I need caffeine. I'm addicted to caffeine. I'll get a headache if I don't drink them.
Yep.
But I'm sensitive to it as well.
Yeah.
So dark outside, no caffeine.
Oh, I'm a 2 p.m. I shut caffeine off at 2 p.m.
Oh,
If
that's
I drink coffee after 2 p.m., I'm up until 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that your wife and you are like polar opposites in terms of
Oh yeah.
of that. Has it led to tension, or she's just like, yeah?
It's gotten better now, but like a point of, and we're good at like squashing beef pretty much immediately.
It's not going to be a Biggie Tupac situation.
Yeah, she is a psychologist, so there's like, even if I wanted to avoid it, like she just has too many tools to just like, get at me. And I recognize that that's a healthier way to live, but like I'm a walls person. Getting home at night after comedy, I don't know how more. Well, I guess the divorce rate for comedians is high, but like getting home at night, the other person is already asleep.
Yeah.
That's every night. Every night that I do stand up, I come home and my wife is already asleep. That's like fucking stepping on tiptoes, trying to slide into the bed in a way that doesn't wake her up. Like, so that is something that I was like, wow, it's every night I have to navigate the situation. That's like a big part of it.
Yeah. But if people want to slide into your bed, so to speak, digitally, we've reached the end of our time, Dan. So can you drop your social media and anything you want to plug for the
Dan
listeners?
Pulzello, Instagram, all the other platforms suck.
Yeah, I'm a big Instagram guy too. So follow Dan Pulzello on Instagram. You got anything? It's gonna come out. Oh, it's gonna come out tomorrow.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Bobby.
Thanks for doing it, Dan. I love you.
Love you too. Oh, he got me.
And remember, folks, early to bed, early to rise. I'm so shaken by our expression of love. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I'm just playing Night Owls. You know I love you.
Thank you